I have the tremendous pleasure of introducing a truly remarkable person, and I only say that because it's true. Our speaker tonight, Beth Soltzberg, is both a social worker and she also has an MBA. She directs the Alzheimer's related disorders family support program. All of our programs have long names at the Jewish Family and Children's Service in Waltham, Massachusetts. Beth facilitates the Memory Café and support group for adults whose parent lives with dementia. She founded and coordinates the Jewish Family and Children's Service Memory Café Percolator, an international resource for those starting and sustaining memory cafes, which you'll hear about tonight. Beth leads the Dementia Friends public awareness program for Massachusetts and is part of the statewide leadership program promoting dementia-friendly community initiatives, all in an effort to destigmatize Alzheimer's and related dementia and educate the community. Finally, Beth earned her MSW and MBA from the University of Chicago and a certificate in end-of-life care from Smith College School of Social Work. She holds an advanced credential in hospice and palliative care work. Wow, Beth. And finally, Beth will enter into the chat the link to her TED Talk. It's, I think, a 14-minute TED Talk, and it's one of the best I know. So please, when you see the link, write it down and take a look. Here it is. So welcome, Beth, and welcome everybody tonight.
Thank you, Barbara, for that incredibly kind introduction. It's such a treat to be here with all of you. Some familiar faces and familiar names and some new folks that I'm getting to meet tonight. I love being part of anything that the Dementia Care Collaborative does. I think you do amazing work. So thank you so much for inviting me. So I'm going to pull up my slides and we will launch right in. Perhaps somebody can just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you can see my screen there. Perfect. Just get my, there we go. Get things working. So we're going to be talking about gardening for moments of joy, finding and cultivating good moments at memory cafes and every day. And I will be sharing some slides and ideas with you for about a half hour or so, and then we'll have plenty of time to talk. And I hope that as the presentation goes along, you will feel free to put your comments, questions, and ideas in the chat at any point. I really want to be more of a facilitator here and not the only voice sharing ideas for cultivating good moments, because you all have so much wisdom to share with one another. So Barbara kindly talked about my professional experience. This is a photo from my backyard garden about a dozen years ago. That's my son there, who you can sort of barely see, who is now in college. So these are old photos, but you can probably tell even from this one, I'm not that good a gardener, but I love it. So I am going to be really focusing on process, not product. This isn't about, learning to create spiffy things. It's about the moments, the experiences that we can have together. Joy is important. That's why this talk is focused on joy. I think of it as an essential nutrient that often gets neglected, and understandably so, when people are dealing with a difficult illness. People living with dementia need moments of joy. Care partners, by which I mean family members, friends, anybody who is in that circle around the individual living with dementia. Care partners need it. Obviously, joy can't change the circumstances, but it can sort of open a window and let in some fresh air, which can give us a change in perspective that sometimes is badly needed. It is fleeting, but when you come right down to it, that's the nature of life. We can't hold things in place. It doesn't make it any less precious. So tonight's conversation is all about ways to keep looking for joy and cultivating it. And I chose the metaphor of gardening for a couple reasons. One, because it's February, and I love thinking about spring coming and getting out in the garden, thinking about the warm earth and the gentle rain and the soft air, warm air. I think we're all craving that, especially on a day like today. But also, gardening is sort of special because it involves this cycle. You have your plan, so you plant your seeds and you watch to see what comes up. Different things come up. Some of it is what you planted. Some of it might be not what you planted, but you might like it anyway. So you kind of weed around the good things and water them and help them get strong. You harvest and you're nourished and repeat. So it's sort of an improvisational dance with nature. And I think that theme really relates to the nature of being care partners together. So let's dig in. We're going to talk first about the gardeners. So obviously you, but who else can be part of cultivating your garden? And we're going to go through a lot of tools, live programs, recorded programs, resources you can use yourself, everyday activities. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of links with you. And so, as Barbara mentioned, you will be getting a handout with all of that information after tonight's program. So you don't need to worry about writing things down. And we'll also talk about some general tips to make your garden grow. So let's talk first about the gardeners. These are faces some of you may know, Judy and Abby, who have shared their story of attending the JF&CS Memory Café as longtime friends. And we're going to talk about friends a fair amount. We're going to talk about extended family. We're going to talk about the person living with dementia. We're going to talk about you. So these are all gardeners. There can be others, neighbors, members of a faith community, etc. We're going to talk about how you can expand that team a little bit. So I have found, and I'm sure many of you can attest to this, a lot of times friends and extended family drift away. And there's a couple of reasons why. Sometimes they need more information. They really don't feel like they know enough about how dementia affects people. And they need more information about what's happening with their friend or relative. So I'm going to share a couple of easy, accessible resources that you could offer to the family friend, the relative, to try to get them over that knowledge hump. Dementia Friends is a global public awareness program. It's available in 28 states and territories in the US, as well as online on the Dementia Friends USA site. Usually when people make use of this program, what they do is attend an interactive 1-hour information session that's offered by a trained volunteer. A lot of this is being done virtually right now, so it's really quite easy to attend. And it's a really great, simple, accessible introduction to how dementia affects people and how each person can make a difference through some basic communication skills and shifts in attitude. It's really about breaking the silence and reducing stigma around dementia. So that's a great resource to suggest to the friend or family member. And a second issue that sometimes comes up is people may feel like, well, I have some understanding, but I don't really know how to spend time with my friend or relative anymore. There are things we used to do together. We used to have phone conversations where we talk about what was new or the, sports games or this or that. Or we used to have certain places we would go together, and those specific things aren't working so well anymore. So I don't know what to do anymore to spend time with this person. So this is where we're going to talk about memory cafes and other programs and resources. So you can make use of those yourselves in your care pair, and you can also suggest that other folks in that broader circle get involved and spend time with the person in your life who's living with dementia, making use of some of these tools. I also want to speak to the concept of cultivating one's own garden, meaning the person living with dementia, what they may need, what they may want, what they may be able to do. And here's a quote from Lori Scherer, who's a wonderful advocate living with dementia. If you want to learn more about her, she has a website there, dementiadays.com. And she says people living with dementia want to learn how to live well with dementia. And I think that's a really important concept, is that it's not just about surviving, but the goal, again, is joy, at least intermittently, like we all want. We all want joy when we can get it, and we want to live well. And what is really hard right now in the United States is that there are very few opportunities for people to see someone living well with dementia. When we see documentaries or we hear about dementia, we often see a focus on loss and what's hard. And that's all real and important, but we also need to see how people living with dementia are coping, adapting, stepping into that driver's seat, and living well. So I have observed that the single most powerful way to make that shift in perception is to get to hear directly from someone who is living with dementia talking about how they do that. So here are some resources to be aware of. Dementia Action Alliance is a great national nonprofit. It's been around for 30 years, and all the board members are living with dementia. They have podcasts, they have group gatherings, they have a lot of resources by and for people living with dementia. Dementia Alliance International, as its name says, it's international, and they also have groups by and for people living with dementia. Dementia Mentors does groups. They do something called a virtual memory cafe, and they also have one-to-one peer mentoring. The National Council of Dementia Minds is a brand new nonprofit, and they're really focusing on helping people become advocates, where they're able to speak to groups about what it's like to live with dementia. And they also have sort of support and discussion groups. The Eastside Institute has a group of workshops called The Joy of Dementia, believe it or not. So, these are all organizations that are great at giving a different framework and helping to show that people can live well with dementia. It's important. So I was talking about how valuable it is to see someone living well with dementia, and then that it is very important for people to be able to see themselves represented on the other factors as well, culture as well. So I'm excited that there are two new programs that were just launched by Dementia Action Alliance and National Council of Dementia Minds, specifically by and for Black Americans who are living with dementia. And hopefully over time, we'll see more advocates who are from a variety of cultural communities, just so that more people can really be able to see themselves represented and to start to feel like, this is something I can talk about. This is something where I have some options to live well. So let's talk about cultivating the garden together. So the care partners, the person living with dementia, and those who care about them. And things that can help that go beautifully are to allow enough time, to not be in a situation where you have a jammed agenda and you're trying to move it along. And I think you all know this, that having more time slowing down is probably the single most helpful resource, so that people living with dementia have more processing time and so that there's not as much stress. To offer choices, because again, it's about feeling empowered and in the driver's seat. And then the concept of improvisation. Some of you might be familiar with Karen Stobbe, who's an improv actor who spent many years with her mother, who was living with dementia. And she really uses this concept of improv theater, which is yes and. So in improv theater, you never contradict the other actor. You just say yes to whatever comes up and you add to it, yes and. So her website, beinginthemoment.org, has a lot of really helpful, interesting videos about how to apply that concept when you are living with dementia together. And another quote from Jackie Pinkowitz at Dementia Action Alliance: it really matters when people living with dementia know that they're influencing what's happening. And I think it's pretty universal. We all want to feel engaged, respected, empowered. So let's talk about the tools, and we're going to talk about live programs, recorded programs, guides and tools for activities that you can facilitate yourself, and everyday activities. Not everyone likes cucumbers. Okay, so I know that as I go through these, you may see some and say, oh, I would never do that, or my partner would never do that. So this is a picture of my son a dozen years ago, and this was the most exciting thing that ever happened in our garden, was that we planted cucumber seeds and a cantaloupe came up. So I think it was a volunteer that came through the compost, but as you can see here, it was like the miracle cantaloupe. So the reason I bring this up here is just that you never know. Sometimes when you jump into an activity, it may yield something entirely different than what you expected, but also good. So I'm going to just encourage you to have a yes and mindset and think about how you could maybe try some of these things, even if they don't grab you at first. So I want to just show the 1-minute video of how memory cafes look, because not everybody's seen one, and it's still an unfamiliar resource for many folks. This video shows in-person and virtual cafes, as well as outdoor cafes with people wearing COVID protection, so gives you kind of a spectrum of what's out there. And then we will hone in on what some of the critical elements are of memory cafes. So again, this is just 1 minute long.
It can be lonely living with memory loss or dementia. But you are not alone. Memory cafes are bringing people affected by dementia together at welcoming social events.
It's fun. I am so thankful to have a place where my mom and I can go and laugh and just enjoy the experience.
I've made new friends. They understand what I'm going through because they are living it too.
Memory cafes encourage me to try different activities, which is really refreshing.
You'll find guest artists, musicians and dancers, educational programs, or simply a place to relax and chat with others. These gatherings are free, and you can attend as many as you would like. Cafes are offered weekly or monthly, with options to meet in person, online, or even by telephone. Visit these websites to learn more and find a memory cafe near you.
So part of why I wanted to show that to you is that if you have a family friend or an extended family member who you might want to ask to go to a memory cafe with your partner, and they've never heard of one or they don't have a picture of what it is, they might feel better watching the video first. So we have it on our website, the Massachusetts Memory Cafe Directory website, which I'm just going to put in the chat here. It will be in the materials that you get. But you can watch that 1-minute video in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. We have a version in each of those languages, and it's right at the top of that directory page. So let me now get myself out of YouTube and onto our next slide. Sometimes I find I get stuck in the, I don't know why it's doing that. All right. Sorry, folks. I'm going to just stop sharing and reshare. Okay. All right, let's just get back to where we meant to be. Here we go. So let's talk a little bit about how how memory cafes can help cultivate joy. And then we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other resources and ideas. So it's important for you to know no one is asked if they have a diagnosis. I'm trying to get this into slideshow mode here. Strange. Well, can you see my slides okay? Okay. So no one's asked if they have a diagnosis, and that's important because it makes it an open door for people who have not been diagnosed or who are not comfortable with their diagnosis or maybe aren't aware of it. People just come as themselves. You don't have to present it as a program for people living with dementia. You can, if that fits, but you don't have to. You can say, you know, this is a group of friendly people, and I heard that they're going to have XYZ activity on this date. Let's go check it out. The focus and the goal is social connection. And the reason is because dementia can be so isolating, both for the people living with dementia and for those who care about them. So that's really the goal, is a welcoming gathering. The cafe is made for both partners, the person living with dementia and the care partners. You can absolutely try it and leave if it's not working. It's a very informal atmosphere, and you can definitely try different cafes. They each have their own character. I like to say they're kind of like the local coffee shop before Starbucks came in and turned everything into Starbucks. So if you didn't like one, that doesn't mean you might not like another. And some people go to several. The activities really vary. A lot of times there are creative arts-based activities, but there's everything under the sun. We've had Red Sox chats a couple times at our cafe. I know some that focus on local history or art history. There's a beautiful one in Topsfield that is based in an outdoor garden from April through October, where there's an accessible path and different things in bloom every month. Cafes are free of charge, and they're very welcoming. And I know some of you who are with us today are regulars at memory cafes, so I welcome any thoughts or observations that you have, obviously. Sometimes people wonder, how do virtual cafes work out? And before the pandemic, I only knew of one virtual cafe, the one run by Dementia Mentors. And that was a real role model because that cafe is by and for people living with dementia. So there are no family members or friends participating. It is just people living with dementia, and it's international. And so they have people joining from different time zones with different accents. And I had the privilege of sitting in on one. This was several years ago, and it was great. There was a real palpable sense of connection. So that helped me think, okay, we can do this when we had to, when the pandemic began. And there really are some pluses. Virtual cafes are happening throughout the week. This little picture here is from the National Memory Cafe Directory, which I will put in the chat. And if you go there, you will see there's a link for Cafe Connect, which is the virtual page. It's set up as a calendar. So you could find something practically every day if you wanted. Family and friends can meet up at a cafe from different locations. That's a really wonderful option that we don't have when we meet in person. There are not very many cafes that are in languages other than English or that are for specific cultural communities. There are some, and so they're more accessible on a virtual basis. I know folks in our area that had been attending a cafe in Brazil, for example, and there's a wonderful bilingual Spanish-English cafe in San Antonio, Texas, and you can attend it because it's virtual. There's no need to bundle into the car, no need to deal with traffic or parking. That is huge. And you have the comforts of home. So you have whatever resources you might need that can just make it easier to spend the time. Virtual programs and group gatherings in general don't work for everyone, but it's worth a try. I cannot count the number of times over the years since our cafe began in 2014 that someone who had just never done anything like the activity that we were offering was having a great time. I think in particular of one gentleman who was a retired trial attorney, his wife had told me he was very intense, very type A, very competitive. And he was there with us dancing. And he said to me, I would never have done this. I never would have done this. And I said, but you're doing it. He said, yeah, I'm doing it. And he was having a great time. So you never know. It's worth a try. So let's see. I don't know what's up with my slides. Let me try one more time to put it in presentation mode. Okay, well, we'll just work with it. So just to mention that as hopefully we get to the point where it's easier to meet in person again, some cafes will probably be moving into a hybrid mode where they can accommodate a group of people in person and a group on a virtual platform. We've really found that some people do better in person, some people do better virtually, and some can do either. So we're trying to find ways to grow and develop so we can serve everybody better. So let's go back to the other gardeners that we talked about at the beginning, because I want to hone in on this. Memory cafes really work well for friends. The cafe provides the activity and the facilitation. If it's a virtual cafe where you're not actually physically attending together, sometimes a phone call can help remind the person, okay, it's time to log on, or even sort of help them stay engaged partway through. Cafes are scheduled so they can provide a regular break for the main care partner. And at the same time, it can help keep the friendship going because you need to do things together to keep that relationship strong. I want to just make a note before I go on to the next slide, which is just that having been one of the facilitators of our adult child support group for so many years, I really believe caring for one another is the most honorable thing that humans do. I think it is so important. It is such a rich experience. And the people who do it become or were tremendous givers. And at the same time, you can't do it alone. So I think it can become a spiral where other people step back and that main person steps up and steps up and steps up. And so I just want to reinforce the concept that it's not about any inadequacy in that person. It's about the need for more hands on deck in order to keep everybody healthy and keep going over the long run and to find those moments of joy, not just to survive. So I really do encourage folks to take advantage of memory cafes and other resources to keep that bigger circle of people engaged. So to find a memory cafe, I had put these in the chat. There's a Massachusetts directory, and there's also a national virtual cafe directory. And you'll be getting those links in the handouts that Barbara sends. So let's talk about some other live programs for people living with dementia and care partners. The Museum of Fine Arts does a virtual Wednesdays tour every month. And there's an email address that you can contact if you're interested. The Alzheimer's Association offers early stage engagement programs. So those are specifically for people in an early stage of disease progression and their partners. The Alzheimer's Family Support Center of Cape Cod, amazing organization that of course is in Cape Cod, but because of the pandemic, they've been offering a lot on a virtual basis, which is available to folks outside of the Cape as well. So it's worth checking their website. Arts and Minds Museum tours, again, virtual these days, a silver lining of this horrible pandemic we've all been surviving, based in New York City. And they have incredible cultural institutions in their docket. And that's also true of the Connect to Culture program run by Caring Kind, also based in New York City, but currently virtual. More live programs. So the ones on this slide are, you have to do a little more digging because they're not regularly scheduled. They're more intermittent. And in some cases, there's a fee. The Nature Connection is a local nonprofit that focuses on live online group or individual programs on how you use nature as a way to find joy. Kairos Alive is a long-standing, amazing dance-based program about cultivating joy and connection if you're living with dementia, based in Minneapolis, but some programs are virtual nowadays. They do an intergenerational dance hall, for example, which is just totally fun. Sweet Readers is a nonprofit that has a intergenerational reading program. So they pair middle schoolers and older adult partners living with dementia, or younger adult, but people living with dementia. And they do a reading and project over a series of weeks. OMA, Opening Minds Through Arts, has periodic virtual workshops, and they're based at Miami University of Ohio. And Silver Kite International does require a monthly membership fee, but they have a lot of neat online workshops as well. So here are some more specialized live programs that I wanted to mention. So again, just for people living with dementia, Dementia Action Alliance, Dementia Alliance International, and Dementia Mentors all offer some group programs. And then there are a few that are designed for telephone, because not everybody has online access. A lot of the virtual programs out there, including memory cafes, can be accessed by telephone, but they're designed around the expectation that people will have the visual input, or most participants will. So these are nice because these are ones that were always designed for telephone. DeRote has a program called University Without Walls, also based in New York, but available to folks anywhere. Covia, Well Connected, Family, Elder Care, Healthy Connections, and Mather Telephone Topics, all phone oriented. So now let's talk about recorded programs and activities that you can facilitate yourself. And you're going to get this slide because I know this is not possible to absorb just as we go through it. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through to hopefully get your interest sparked, but then you'll get all of these slides from Barbara. So some of these are free. I've noted where they're not. The Creative Caregiving Guide is a series of videos and guidance to do visual art, dance and movement, music and poetry activities together. It's created by the National Center for Creative Aging, and it now lives on the Scripps Gerontology at Miami University of Ohio website. 2 of the poetry modules are in Spanish, the rest are in English. Time Slips is a venerable nonprofit that is all about joy and connection, and focused on people living with any kind of cognitive change and those who care about them. They have this great free creativity center with visual and written prompts to create a story together. They have project guides and beautiful questions. And if we have time at the end, we will try one of those together. Maria's Place has a wide range of activities, videos, and meditations. Much of it is free. There is a paid section, but there's a lot that's free. Tales and Travel Memories was created by a librarian. These are travel adventures. They come either with slides or video and short readings. Reading to Connect. So these are adult-themed books formatted for people with vision and/or cognitive impairments, and they are for sale. Ageless Grace Fitness has recorded lessons, which you pay for as well. More recorded stuff. You know, there's a lot out there which isn't necessarily geared to people living with dementia, but it's just worth thinking about. I've recently been told about a couple of different companies that offer writing prompts and materials to record and share personal stories. Storyworth and Feet to the Fire are 2. There may be more. Animal cams are really fun. I sometimes love to go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium jellyfish cam. It's so relaxing. I have a couple other ones listed here. Classic movies, great moments in sports, family movies, with or without reminiscence. The challenge with family movies is it can be so tempting to want to say, you know, come on, you remember who's this, you know, and to get into quizzing the person living with dementia a little bit. And that can be really stressful. So it's great if you can just try to play with the family movie and not have an expectation about reminiscence, and maybe it will arise and maybe it won't, but it can be wonderful fun to watch, children's birthdays or weddings or other special moments, regardless. Everyday activities, it can help to have a daily schedule. Chores are a great thing to always come back to, shredding old papers, folding laundry, making letters, thank you notes, and window signs. We just made Valentine's cards at our last memory cafe, and the artist who facilitated showed us a project she'd been part of through a program called Everyday Boston that involved giving Valentines to perfect strangers. And they especially focused on giving them to people working at the MBTA and first responders and people working in medical settings. And we just heard stories about how it lit up someone's day to receive a card like this, or at the grocery store. So a simple handmade card can be fun to make, and it can be such a powerful thing to share with people. Baking with tutoring grandkids, music playlists. I know people have a lively playlist and a restful playlist. Music is powerful. Sing and dance, recite familiar poems. There are a lot of free adult coloring pages available online. Set up a bird feeder, plant seeds, prepare veggies, sort spices, anything that engages the senses. Go for a walk or drive. I looked online, I searched for any kind of guide to nature scavenger hunts, and all the ones I found were geared toward children, which was very frustrating. So there's a call to arms for somebody out there to just format some that are geared toward adults, but you can certainly use what's out there. I'm going to pause for a moment before I get into tips. If anybody has questions about any of the resources I've just shared, or comments, maybe you've tried one of these things or you want to share an experience, please feel free to put it in the chat. We are going to have time for more discussion shortly, but I'm just going to pause here in case anybody wants to chime in before we go on to tips. No questions now, but wow, what a wealth of resources. Thank you, Kathy. And I really hope I'm not overwhelming you, but again, you're going to get the handout with all of these links. There are some really great resources out there, and it's so hard to find them. I think they're hidden treasures in many cases, and I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know about. So I welcome your input, but please do check some of these out, whatever grabs you. So I'm going to go ahead on and talk about a few tips. That's my daughter there in the picture 12 years ago, again in our unruly garden. Some tips. So a lot of what we've been talking about involves visual and auditory input, something that you see on screen or you hear. And one of my messages is to really take that input seriously because it shapes our mood dramatically. I remember when I used to work in hospice and I would go visit people at home, sometimes people would have the TV on in the background and it would be a court show or some kind of, violent drama. And we'd be talking about how to manage stress. And I'd think, my goodness, turn off that TV for starters. I think sometimes we don't realize how it affects us. So, really kind of be intentional about what input you want to bring in, especially for people who don't have some of the filters that can kind of help us manage that stressful input. When I'm hearing the news, I'm bringing a lens to it that maybe can help me, cope with it. And I can turn it off. I don't have difficulty turning it off. So that's the kind of thing. If someone does not have some of those filters and a way to sort of contextualize what they're hearing or to turn it off when they want it off, it can create a lot of stress. So keep in mind, we want to really modulate that. Again, slow down. This is so hard for us in our society. We're such a production-oriented, fast-paced society. And the reality is, you are all coping with an enormous amount. And sometimes there are things you just have to get through every day, and it's hard. To the extent possible, if you can simplify and slow down, it's easier to cultivate joy that way. Improvise. So if it's working, keep going with it. If it's not working, let it go. When I first started running a memory cafe in 2014, I sort of nervously would have this packed agenda. And over the years, I've simplified and I've learned it's much better to have a manageable and flexible plan so that if something really is sparking something, we can just continue with it. And on the flip side, if it's not grabbing people, that's okay. Just let it go. It's about the process, not the product. So it's really about how it feels to do the activity and to spend the time together. It's about looking for those fleeting moments of joy and cultivating them, not about creating something that's going to stand on its own. You may, because I think often unintentionally, we do create things that are moving just because of the authenticity in them, but that's not the goal. Everyone is different. No one size fits all. At the Memory Cafe, we do something different every month, and it's been amazing to me to watch how different activities bring different instincts out in our participants. And sometimes it's because that was the type of thing that meant something to them for years. Sometimes that isn't the case at all. Like the trial attorney who was enjoying our conga line that I mentioned. You know, sometimes just at that moment, it sparks something for the person. And then take care of you, take care of the gardener. So if you can find ways to do what you enjoy as part of this and get help from others and take breaks and really take time to appreciate the work of your hands and your heart. And unfortunately, sometimes you won't hear that appreciation from others. And that isn't because you don't deserve it. It's because of that isolation that can sit in. It's because a lot of other people don't understand what you're really going through. And maybe your partner who's living with dementia is not able to express appreciation in the way they used to. So all the more reason to offer yourself the same kindness that you give, because you understand how it feels. So it's very important to, in this context of slowing down, to include moments for you to take a deep breath and say, wow, I worked really hard this morning. I really value how caring I am, how hard I'm trying, all that I'm doing, whether or not it works out the way you hope. It's very important to give yourself that appreciation. So I wanted to see if we could try a beautiful question, just so you can get more of a feel for what this particular resource is. This is from the Creativity Center at timeslips.org. And one thing I like about these beautiful questions is they're so simple. This is not a complex activity that somebody has to read up on or read instructions. These are just a database of questions that don't rely on memory recall. And participants in our support group have taken these questions to Thanksgiving dinner or another family gathering and introduced them as a way that the family can have a discussion that doesn't require memory recall to really embrace their family member who's living with dementia. People use them one-on-one with their partner. And again, you can offer these to those other gardeners and say, you know, here's a list. There's several screens that look like the one I have here in the slide. So there's a lot of them. You can offer this to a friend or an extended family member and say, you know, I know you want to have a phone call and you don't always know what to talk about. Why don't you pick one of these? We use these a lot at our Memory Cafe. So I picked one which is what gift would you give the next generation? And I wonder if we could just take a couple minutes and play with that question. So if anybody would like to unmute yourself and just respond with your thoughts, that would be great. What gift would you give the next generation? And we have people here of different generations, so it's going to mean something different to everybody. But I'd love to hear from anybody who has a thought on that. Including you, Barbara.
I'm thinking. It's Kathy talking.
Okay.
Thinking of is it a proverb? You instead of giving a man a fish, you teach him how to fish. So I'm trying to figure out instead of just saying peace, I'm thinking maybe of a quality, wisdom.
That's wonderful.
Wisdom.
Wisdom. That's great. So a quality that can cultivate peace, and that would be wisdom. That's great. Anybody else? Do you have thoughts in response to Kathy's idea or other responses to this question? And as Barbara said, feel free to put it in chat. And I see Joe put in the patience and interest to listen. That's great. Sometimes it seems like things keep getting faster, and I think maybe it's related to technology. So to slow down and give the gift of the patience and interest to listen, that's great. Anybody else? Time to connect with others. So again, coming back to time and slowing down. Yeah, very nice. So I think, as you can see, this kind of question tends to elicit ideas and thoughts from people, and it doesn't require remembering something about one's past or having a particular base of knowledge. And we oftentimes will use one of these beautiful questions for the last half hour at the JF&CS Memory Café, and they tend to get very good conversations going. Joanne, a functioning democracy, what a great gift to give to the next generation. Let's hear it for a functioning democracy. Whew. Yeah. Very important. This is also a nice question to discuss with people of different generations. So this is just one of many beautiful questions in Time Slips' database there. So it's a great resource, and you might find it's useful for you sometime where you just need a new idea, something to talk about at lunch. And Barbara put in freedom to vote. Yes.
Oh, sorry. You got me thinking when you said do it with different generations, it'd be cool to ask 20-somethings what gift they would want to receive from us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. The JF&CS Memory Café is done in partnership with a student group at Brandeis. So we usually have several undergrads on with us. And so we have done that exact thing. And that's been really cool, I have to say. It's good to get generations talking to each other. Another thing we often don't get to do. So I think you get the idea here. This is a resource that you might find useful. You might find it to be a good resource to share with a friend or family member who you would like to engage more, staying part of that circle, staying connected. So I thank you for looking at all these slides and resources with me. And what I'm going to do is stop sharing so that we can more easily see each other. And Joe, I'm glad you love this. Thank you. And I wonder if that's Joe Wallace, the photographer.
Yeah, it is.
Who makes absolutely beautiful photos. You should put your link in the chat, Joe. Beautiful photos of people living with dementia, really helping to break stigma and, again, open up these important conversations visually.
So Beth, I'd like to start us off with asking you two questions. But by the way, I've got to tell you, I can't wait to go tomorrow to get my slides and try some of these websites. They're all new to me, or most are. It's terrific. Thank you. My two questions. The first is some really taking us inside a memory cafe. I'd like to, a number of times, you know, caregivers vision, as do most social workers, the experience of bringing their relative to an adult day care program and then having free time to take a breath, do errands and all. But can you describe to me, and maybe this is why I'm asking, if some of you are care partners who have attended, and it sounds like you have, the program, what it's like. So this is asking you to join. And the one thing I've heard, I'll just say, is that when a care partner, you've taught me this, enters with their relative, they can separate. It's not that they're going, if I understand, and needing to watch their relative at every moment. Like if, for example, my husband wanders, can you help me picture what my experience will be? Do I need to be afraid that he'll leave the building? Will there be other professionals? Could you illustrate that experience for the care partner?
Those are great questions. So I'll respond. And then, as Barbara suggested, if there's anybody with us that wants to share their experience, that would be great. So I think some of the questions you asked, the answer is going to be different depending if it's an in-person or a virtual program. If it's in person, then there certainly is that opportunity to separate. And in fact, this is something that I really miss since the cafe I run has been virtual, is that we don't really have a way that, different people can sort of meet up at the coffee table and have a separate conversation and share contact information. And that did used to happen a lot when we were in person. Cafes generally meet in a quite contained space that's easy to navigate. And everything about the cafe is set up to be safe and to help people with a wide range of cognitive needs feel comfortable and successful. So the refreshments, everything is or should be chosen to make it easy to navigate. So it does give a spouse or an adult child or a friend who's there with someone living with dementia that opportunity to connect with other care partners without worrying. And that is feedback that I have received over the years, and other cafe coordinators have received over the years, is that even though it's not the traditional idea of respite that you're describing, where you get to, bring your partner to a great activity and then you can go do something else, and that's very important too. It's a different kind of respite. Sometimes we talk of it as respite together, because you don't have to drive the activity. You can enjoy it and have fun, and you can be pampered a little bit too. And you need fun together also. So I hope that helps. Now, if it's a virtual program, there isn't that same ability to sort of walk, off to a different part of the room. But the virtual cafes are still designed to be enjoyable for all parties. They're usually between 1 and 2 hours in length. So, once a month, or sometimes they're as often as weekly, but it's not many hours, several days a week, the way a day program is. So they're really those designed to be those moments of joy and connection that you can sprinkle throughout your month.